Hey buddy, what's up? Amir Fazeli here from Adonis Athletics. I want to thank you for downloading your copy of the Adonis Athletics Iron Grappler program. So just quickly, I want to go through a couple of things in regards to the program because there's certain assumptions that are in the program and certain things that we need to be clear about before starting the program. And also a little bit about what the logic behind the program is, what we're actually doing with it, and what you can expect from the program. So firstly, it's obviously a 12-week program. It's aimed at grapplers specifically, so not really for boxers or any striking sports. What you need to make sure is, first of all, the program assumes that you have a good command of lifts. So you've been going to a gym for, say, a year, and you've been doing some squats, some bench, some deadlifts, some overhead presses. You have some understanding of jumping activities, throwing activities, things like that. And you're confident in doing them safely. Before you embark on this program or any other program for that matter, make sure that you've got clearance from a qualified medical professional so that you can stay safe and make sure you get the most out of the program. First of all, you're going to need a heart rate monitor. They're very cheap. Get yourself just one that's semi-reliable. You can find one on eBay or whatever. But you'll need it because we need to measure everything along as we go. It's no use just saying do X, Y, Z for a certain number of minutes or whatever. We need to measure intensity as time goes on. That's very important. So get yourself a heart rate monitor because you're going to be able to do the right thing on the right day so that you can not overstress the body on particular workouts. That's very important. The other thing we assume is that you don't have no pre-existing health conditions or injuries. If you're injured, don't do it. If you have any pre-existing health issues, also don't do it. First, get medical clearance from a doctor. Very, very important. Also, as I said before, want to make sure that you have some kind of a decent background in lifting and training and understand the technique behind it. Let's talk a little bit about what the logic behind the program is, right? So when you look at the program, if you haven't looked at it already, you'll see that there are three main blocks. Block one is all about building the body. This is getting everything prepared so that we have a solid base to work off of in the subsequent blocks. So you'll notice that there is a lot of steady state cardio. So you'll be doing jogs for 30 minutes. And at a certain heart rate. The heart rate is prescribed. So again, make sure you get yourself that heart rate monitor, very important. Also in terms of the weight section of it, the weight training, there'll be a lot of high reps, so we're focusing on building muscular endurance, but also building some muscle. Because first of all, we want to maximize our potential to develop strength in subsequent cycles and power in subsequent cycles. And also muscular endurance, for obvious reasons, is very important for sports, for any grappling sport, right? So in the first block, we are just focusing on building a solid base. You will have regular sport practice in all blocks, including the first block. And in the first block, your sport practice, so if you're a BJJ grappler, if you're a wrestler, judo, whatever, your sport practice is relatively lower in intensity, and it's all about gaining technical knowledge and perfecting your technique in the different movements, in setting up certain positions and angles and things like that. That's what it's all about. It's got not really much to do with fitness as far as this block is concerned in relation to your sport. In the second block, we bump it up a notch and we start to introduce heavier work in terms of weight training, and we do less of it. So in the first block, we've got 3 days a week weight training. In the second block, it's just 2 days a week. And now the focus is on just getting stronger in terms of as far as weight training is concerned, because we want to increase the body's capability to generate maximal force in a short period of time so that we can then later transfer that into some power training, right? As far as the other aspects, we are very determined in this block to develop aerobic power. So that's your ability to produce a lot of force using the aerobic system and do a lot of work using the aerobic system. Contrary to popular belief, the aerobic system doesn't just kick in at the 2-minute mark. So although yes, after the 2-minute mark of you doing whatever, the aerobic system is much more purely involved. It's involved from the get-go. And if you have a good, solid aerobic system, and an aerobic system that can generate a lot of power, by power I mean its ability to generate and replenish ATP stores so that you can continue to perform multiple muscular contractions, right? That's what I'm talking about. So if you can train your aerobic system to have a lot of power, to do a lot of work for a given space of time, then you're gonna have a much easier time recovering between rounds, as well as just being able to continue to do work during rounds. Very, very important. In fact, research has shown that in sports that are very heavily glycolytic based, so say activities like 400-meter running, or even like wrestling and things like that, a lot of the ATP stores, so a lot of the fuel that you receive for muscular contraction can actually come from the aerobic system from the get-go, and also in repeated bouts, in repeated sprints, in repeated times where you need to generate a lot of power in a short period of time. So it's very, very important that you take this block very seriously. It's also very important that you listen to your body. The one drawback that this program has is that it's just a generic program for grapplers. You are not getting coaching, so you're not going to have access to a coach to tell you to back off at this certain place or push harder on this certain place on a particular day. Understand how to listen to your body so that on a particular day, if you're not feeling so good, you either got to drop the workload or just sit that day out. This is the main importance and the main differentiating factor between just following a random program versus having a coach. You will always get more out of a program when you do it with a coach, an experienced coach that can direct you and guide you on what to do on particular days. But with that being said, it's a very solid base of a program. It's a very solid guideline. And as long as you listen to your body and really give it time to recover where it's required, you can get significant improvements from this program. Now, moving on. In the third block, we will retain aerobic power, and we're starting to focus on transferring some of that strength that we've built in the second block into power generation. And that's done through post-activating potentiation. What that is, and you'll notice, is you do a heavy exercise, such as heavy box squats, for example, and then you have a very short rest, and you follow that up into, say, some sort of a jump. And that helps improve power generation. The other thing that we're focusing on in the third block is developing some lactic acid tolerance, and that's done through some lactate threshold training, which is basically your ability to be able to work very close to that point where the body starts to produce a lot of lactate, where it starts to get fatigued, and you being able to push through that or even increase the amount of work you can do at that point, okay? So that point roughly works out at about 85% of your max heart rate. Again, this is why you'll need a heart rate monitor for this program, because the instructions are all in there in regards to what your heart rate max should be and how to calculate your lactate threshold for a particular training session. The other thing that we do in this block is the introduction of some circuits for the development of the glycolytic pathway, which is very important going into a competition. Now, typically, a lot of fighters will do a lot of circuits, high intensity circuits, and they absolutely kill themselves week in, week out, multiple days a week for an extended period of time leading into a fight. And by the time the fight comes around, they're usually burnt out at both ends, and they just cannot perform on the day. They feel very sluggish on fight day. And if you're listening to this and you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I mean. Typically, it's because they've gone too hard from the early days, and they've done things like circuits and things like that because it looks hardcore, it looks really tough, and so the logic tells them that if they can do multiple circuits every week, then they'll be really fit for come fight day. Although circuits and high bursts of activity done multiple times is important. It needs to be put in at the right place. Research has shown that adaptations to things like that, things like circuits and high intensity activity done one after the other with short rest periods, come and peak at about anywhere between 3 to the 6 week mark. After that, you start to get either no further adaptation or you actually get a diminishing adaptation. So that's why it's strategically placed at this point of the program. I always believe that it's better to go into a fight or a match a little bit under stressed, so a little bit fresher, than to push yourself and risk being overtrained going in. Okay, so that's the point of block number 3. And then finally you have the final week, the 4th week of block number 3, which is the taper. You will notice that it's very easy going. It's high intensity at the start of it, but it's very short in duration, the way it's set up. And then towards the second half onwards, you're just pretty much off. Recovery is very important. Make sure you speak to your coach or do your research on what the correct recovery techniques are, what the best kind of recovery techniques are. Nutrition is extremely important. Sleep is extremely important. Don't skimp on those things. The program is going to be very demanding, and it's going to assume that you are going to do the things that you need to do. Make sure that you get enough sleep, that you get the right food, the right amount of calories, right amount of protein, fats and carbs, especially at the right times through the day around training time, and that you're just going to look after your body and listen to your body on particular days that you maybe feel like you shouldn't be training as hard or shouldn't be training at all, and on other days when you maybe feel fresh and you can maybe push yourself a little bit extra, although even that's not so recommended. If there are any questions, obviously let us know. Happy to answer them. Over time, I'll develop a list of frequently asked questions for everybody. If you don't have your copy of the program, there'll be a link in the comment section below. Click on the link, put your name down, and you get a copy of it yourself. I hope that the program can help you become a better grappler, and if you use it for your next fight, I hope you kick some ass. Stick around, more videos coming.